So Marisa, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Great to have you here. So we've just heard you've achieved some incredible things in the space, and I think it's fair to say that the type of work that you do sort of goes against the grain from traditional therapy and the way that people work. Now, I'm definitely sure that that's one of the reasons why you've been as successful as you have, and you've had such a positive impact on so many people. But was that something that you intentionally set out to do from the beginning, or is that something you kind of stumbled across?
Do you know, I was very lucky because my father was just the most amazing head teacher whose whole purpose in life was to make kids feel special and to be the best they could be. So he influenced me 100%. When I became a therapist, I just really wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make people feel good. I wanted to make them understand that your past does not define. You can come from the worst upbringing. You can have a horrible early life. I always see your life as a clock. I say, listen, your child is only the first 10 minutes. You've got 50 minutes left. And it's really important to help people understand that it's not where you're from, it's where you're going. You be anything and do anything if you only know how. But most people just don't know how. So I set about wanting to teach them the how. But also, it had to be easy. You know, when people go to therapy, and it's all very common, they talk about the frontal lobe cortex and the neurological damage and the psychological pattern, and people get very confused. It's like when someone talks to me about the cookies on my phone, on my computer, or the buffering, and I don't know what they're talking about, and I feel frustrated. And I never wanted clients to think, I just feel stupid here because I don't know what she's talking about. So for me, I wanted to make therapy simple. I wanted to make it all about the client. I wanted to speak their language. And I think that was very important to me to pull off, because I know what it's like to feel horrible and stupid and ugly and useless. I also know what it's like to feel amazing. And it actually isn't that difficult to go from the first to the second. You just have to know how, but it has to be easy. It has to be fast. I think people have lost interest in I'm going to therapy every Thursday at 4 o'clock for the next 4 years. I mean, we live in such a fast world. When that circle is going around on my computer, oh no, I don't even have time to wait. Just get me another, let me go to my laptop or my phone. And the world is too fast now to deal with long, drawn out therapy, because it just makes the pain take too long to go away.
I've heard you speak before, and you shared the story of sort of when you go to see a doctor, and then and also your surgeon, you don't have to build a relationship with that surgeon. You don't have to build a relationship with your dentist. Like, there's a pain, this problem they can solve, and they solve it. And I kind of get the view that the work that you do is very much aligned more along those lines, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, all therapists are good people and they want to help people. That's why they become therapists. But some therapists take one and go, hey, you know, you shouldn't even have the word rapid and therapy together. That's offensive. Therapy is long. But then nobody said, but why is it long? You know, here's a question. If you are in pain, physical pain or emotional pain, why would you have to wait so long to get it? If I go to the emergency room and go, hey, I've broken my leg. In fact, I broke my arm in the snow a few years ago. When I went there, we had no discussion. They just fixed it. I went into anaphylactic shock in New York. Ambulance came, whizzed me off. I have no idea what the name was of those people, or the doctor that shoved an EpiPen in my leg and said, you're very lucky you didn't die, because I'd eaten fish all my life. But I don't know what their names are. I never built a relationship with those people. I'm just very glad they saved my life. So if you turn up at the dentist with a tooth pain, if you turn up at the chiropractor with back pain, if you turn up at the doctor's or indeed the emergency room in pain, you expect to be treated fast. It's like, take the pain away. When you turn up with therapy, it's like, well, we got to develop a relationship first and build trust. We got to understand the pain. This is going to take a long time. And then eventually we might take it, or we might not. You might just learn to live with yourself the way you are. And I don't blame therapists for doing that. I blame the training that tells them that's necessary. And, you know, people come to me and they go, well, my therapist said I was resistant to change. What does that even mean? I flew here from Cleveland. I've spent all this money to be told I'm resistant to change. I don't want to get better. And it just isn't true. People can get better really, really, even with depression, even with anxiety, even with chronic addictions. The treatment doesn't have to be long. You know, Einstein always said, simplify, simplify, simplify. And I think being a head teacher's daughter and seeing how my father took educating and turned it around, and he never had detention. He was very keen that you only went to lessons you were good at. He was so revolutionary, but he got amazing results. I thought, well, you know, that he was my mentor. Be revolutionary in your field. I mean, look at Dyson. He's revolutionized hair dryers, fans, vacuum cleaners. And it's good to come along and say, just because it's always been this way. You know, in Finland, they don't have detention. You only have to go to classes you like. And they've got an amazing success. So it's good to look at someone and say, well, just because it's always been that way, let's change it, and let's change it now.
And was that something, so I know originally, very early on, you studied to be a child psychologist. So was that something you realized when you were doing that? And I'm curious, what was it that made you decide to want to be a child psychologist in the first place?
Well, I think again, that was my lovely dad. His passion in life was helping children, particularly children that were underprivileged, disadvantaged. He was an amazing guy, and I saw the joy it gave him, and his life was completely fulfilled by that. So I thought, yeah, I want to do that too. So I thought, well, being a child psychologist is a good thing to do. But actually, I realized very quickly it's very hard, especially when you're young. I was only like 22. And you tend to have three patients, mum, dad, or divorced, a kid. And it's so hard to get through. And it just wasn't for me. So I didn't ever complete those studies. I left and went to LA to teach aerobics for Jane Fonda instead, which was much better for me in every possible way. But that was an eye-opener too, because I left the world of the mind and went to work in the world of the body, training people in her workout studio in Beverly Hills. And then I've always had this, I guess you'd call it an inquiring mind. Why does people do what they do? And when I was teaching aerobics for her, every third girl in her class was anorexic, bulimic, exercise compulsive, or had body dysmorphia, or had this thing called orthorexia, where you only eat clean, organic, healthy food. And it was like an epidemic living in Beverly Hills, and seeing that was just so bizarre. And then I went to Africa. When I was in Africa, my little tour guide said to me, hey, is it true that people in your country starve themselves? And I was so embarrassed to say yes, because they don't have any money. And then he said, is it true that people eat food and then make themselves sick? I said, yes. He said, why? I said, well, that's a good question. Just couldn't, but they don't have enough food. He couldn't get to grips with people having food and choosing not to eat it, or having food and choosing not to take the nourishment from it. So I guess that set me on a path of looking at eating disorders, because the epidemic is so bad. I mean, there's so many girls on diet, so many kids of 12 now obsessed with what they look like, and people spend their whole life dieting, hating their body, punishing it, and then get to 60 and go, why did I do that? What a waste. So that's where I went, and I really loved it. But people would ring up and go, hey, I know you're the anorexic girl. No, I'm sorry, let me say that again. I know you're the girl that deals with people with eating problems, but I've got a fear of lifts or bees or flies, or I can't get on a plane, or can I come to you? And so then I stopped specializing and diversified, because it was so interesting. And I've been doing it ever since. And I love it just as much now as the very day that I started.
And that comes, like you say, from those, as those people are coming to you, I'm guessing, you're what, I can help you, so why wouldn't I work through that? And I know that obviously hypnosis nowadays has been a big part of the work that you do. It's a huge part of rapid transformational therapy, which obviously you created. But when you joined, I believe that when you started to learn hypnosis, it was from Gil Boyne, and obviously Gil was sort of a real leader in the world of hypnosis as well. So how important and instrumental to your success do you think it was, from learning from someone that was at the top of their game, in becoming the person you've become and doing the great work you have?
Yeah, well, Gil was a bit like my dad, revolutionary. Gil was certainly a genius in his field, and he definitely did it his way. He broke every rule. He was unconventional, but he got powerful results. And so he was a great teacher for me, a great mentor, and I still dedicate all my books to him. But you see, when you work with people like Gil and like my dad and like Jane Fonda, and then of course I began to get a lot of very famous, wealthy clients, that was such a lesson because I began to realize that they all think the same. I may be working with a billionaire who's flown me in on his private jet, or someone who's running their own cafe, but everyone had the same problems. And one of the foundations of RTT, the reason I created my own brand of therapy was, let's cut through it. I even call my brand of hypnosis skipnosis, because we skip all that let's float along on a cloud and, oh, your headache's black, let's turn it pink, let's have a long walk through the forest to relax, because frankly no one's got the time anymore. And so I was looking at what makes people tick. Why are some people really successful in love, in business, and why are other people not? Why are some people depressed and other people seem to have it all? And of course, it all comes down to the way you think. You can cut that any way you like, but the way you feel is always going to be down to two things: the pictures you make in your head and the words you say to yourself. And that's actually very good news, because that's so easy to change. The pictures you make in your head, the words you say to yourself. If I'm about to go on stage and speak, and I've many times sat in the room outside with other speakers, go, oh God, I'm so nervous. And this is terrifying, isn't it? And oh my God, this is a nightmare. And I feel like I'm being tortured. I'm like, what? Being invited on a television show to talk about your book. That's your fantasy dream come true. Why would you call it a nightmare, torture, hell, a disaster? I'm losing my mind, or I'm losing my shit. I'm like, well, of course you're not, because we'd all have left the room if that was true. But people, without even knowing it, use very, very negative words, and they intensify. I'm having a massive panic attack. I've got chronic stress. I'm falling apart. I'm losing the plot. When you're actually talking about being invited to give a presentation at work, or maybe go on a television show and discuss your book, or perhaps go and speak, or maybe going on a date with someone who could turn out to be the love of your life. And, you know, your thoughts control your feelings control your actions control your events and your behavior. And everything goes back again to how you think. And changing how you think is incredibly easy. I really wish it was taught in schools. And in fact, we do have a lot of our RTTs, people we've trained now, teaching this in schools and being paid for it. And we've got our anti-bullying program in schools, and we're getting a lot of RTT in schools, in juvenile detention. I think you call it reform school. We've got some hospitals using it. But, you know, people have been told that change is complicated. When I was studying, I never forget my very eminent teacher saying, you know, the mind is an immensely complicated thing. It takes a lifetime to understand it and a second lifetime to apply the understanding. I'm like, but how does that work? Because we don't have two lifetimes. Why would you get an amazing mind that it would take your whole life to work out? So that was a thing I wanted to simplify. And really, my own clients taught me the workings of the mind. You don't need to know much about the mind at all in order to make it your best friend and your best ally. Your mind does what it thinks you want. When you go, if another guy dumps me, I'll kill myself. I'll die if that goes wrong. I just couldn't cope with that. This kid is making me insane with tiredness. You're telling your mind, I don't want that. And then you wonder why you have secondary infertility, or why relationships don't work. So your mind does what it thinks you want. It bases it entirely on the way you dialogue with yourself, which you're always free to change. We are super coded to always run back to what's familiar while avoiding what's unfamiliar. And that can seem difficult, but hey, you can make anything familiar. If you take a bit of plastic and shove it in your eye, that doesn't feel familiar at all. But if you wear lenses every day, it becomes familiar in no time at all. And then the final thing about the mind is that the way you feel about everything is down to the pictures you make and the words you make, which you're free to change. And so many people make really negative pictures. How was last week? Oh, it was hell. It was a disaster. It all went wrong. I nearly died of stress. My builder is making me lose my mind. My kids is making me want to kill myself. And I ate all weekend like an out of control train wreck. And now look at me, I'm the size of a horse, which isn't true. So if you're prepared to lie to yourself like that without even knowing it, tell yourself a better lie. How was your weekend? It was amazing. I ate really healthy food, had a great time with my kid, I got some work done, and I just had the best time. You might say, well, that's not true either. But hey, here's a choice. You can say whatever you like. You can be super negative or super positive. You are free to do that. But what you're not free to do is to choose what the negative does to your body. When you say this headache is killing me, if I look at a cake, I get fat, my job is killing me. Of course you can say that because it's a free country, but you can't choose what that does to your nervous system, to your body, to your life. So you might as well think, right, I can only tell you the truth. Believe me, your mind doesn't know, and it certainly doesn't care if what you tell it is good or bad, right or wrong, true or false. So you might as well tell it amazing things. So if I'm going to go on stage and I feel that tingling, I can go, oh my God, I'm having a panic attack. I'm so nervous. I'm shaking, like my stomach's doing somersaults. So I can go, I'm so excited. That feeling is excitement, because we have to learn to decide what our feelings mean. I'm going on a date and I'm sick to my stomach. I'm going on a date and I feel great. This could be the night where I meet my soulmate. And it's so easy to talk to yourself differently. You know, my new book is called Tell Yourself a Better Lie, because that's what we do all the time.
I think most people massively underestimate the power of language. And as you've just said there'll be people listening to this going, oh my God, yeah, I say this all the time to myself. No wonder I feel the way that I feel.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. And what I obviously you've mentioned you've done there's been a huge amount of learning, and you like to simplify things. One of the things that I think is really interesting around the work that you do is that with the work that you've done and you sort of whittled it down to ultimately there's two needs that we have. And those two needs essentially drive a lot of our behavior in the way that we think and the way that we behave. So would you be able to share a little bit around those two needs?
Sure. You know, one of the reasons I created my own brand of therapy, RTT, and we've trained over 7,000 therapists all over the world, is to, you know, almost condense human behavior. And people say, I don't know what's wrong with me. I guess I'm just messed up. I guess I'm just crazy. But when you understanding is first. So we come onto the planet and we need to survive, of course. In order to survive, we have two driving needs. I must find connection and avoid rejection. You can see that in tiny children. They bond you, they cling on to you. And I took in 7 abandoned cats, tiny little kittens in lockdown. And every time I walked in the room, they would like mountaineer up my leg and cling on to me for dear life, because they knew you're the source of food. And so it's imprinted in us. Find connection. If you find connection, if your mum likes you, she'll feed you, you'll live. If people like you and you belong to the tribe, you'll make it. And while we're finding connection, we're also trying really hard to avoid rejection, because not long ago, rejection would kill you. Cultures would cast you out, banish you, ostracize you, maroon you if you're a difficult sailor, put you into solitary confinement. And so we still live with this fear. I'll die if you reject me. Listen to all these songs. I can't live without you. I'll die if you leave me, which is not true. What is absolutely true is not long ago, rejection could kill you. I mean, I studied Romeo and Juliet for my A-level, and in Romeo and Juliet, they banished him outside of the walls of the city. And he said, but I'd rather die. There's nothing out there but purgatory. You know, if you ever watched Game of Thrones, you understood very quickly survival was a numbers game. If you lived on the wall or you were out walking in the snow, you needed to belong to a big group. And if you belonged to a big group, you were more likely to, if you're on your own, I mean, imagine that's why we lived in forts, you know, when we were out in the Wild West. You couldn't live in a little house on the prairie. It's too scary. But a fort, a walled place, with a big group made you make it. So we still have this primitive innate fear that we could die of rejection. And I tell people, listen, it's not true. Rejection can be the best thing that ever happened to you. I'm so glad I left college. I'm so glad my first love dumped me, because if they hadn't, I might still be there. And the other thing is that nobody can reject you without your consent. And so it's very important to understand that everything that's running you is still finding connection, avoiding rejection, because of a belief, I'll die if you reject me. When the truth is, you could live on your own in an apartment till you're 102, get everything delivered by Amazon, never leave the house. You might live until you're 100 years old. I wouldn't recommend it. But we can live now. I mean, and we are doing that. We go to the store, it's all automated. You go to the bank, there's no one there. We're learning, that actually we don't have that word of connecting, but we're going to be okay. But it's very important to every day remind yourself of the truth. Nobody can reject you without your permission, which you are absolutely free to not give. And there'll be people say horrible things about you, but you get to choose whether to let it in or not.
In your book, you share actually some really great tips around when people say nasty things to you, which when I first heard, I thought this is genius. And it's so simple but so effective. Would you be able to share what some of those are for the people that are listening?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I have a wonderful life and a charmed life, but every now and again somebody will pop up. There's someone at the moment who decided to do a little video of me saying, because I tell the story about how I was asked to leave college, and she said, oh, you're not qualified, you're a quack doctor, you're a scam. I think she called me a scummy quack doctor. And at first I thought, what, I'll just write to her and say, hey, I know you think that, but I was asked to leave college 40 years ago. A lot has changed. I've been back to college. But then I realized there was actually no point in dialoguing with someone who gets pleasure from diminishing people. So when somebody comes up and says something really horrible to you, the first thing you should say is, oh, thank you for sharing that. Luckily, I don't agree, because it's very important not to, if someone said to you, oh, you look awful, or, oh, I listened to you talk on TED, it was terrible. I read your book, I hated it, there was nothing original in it, or, yeah, your business is useful, I went to your shop, I didn't like anything. You have to say, thanks for sharing. Thank you for sharing that. That's all you have to say, because in saying thank you for sharing that, what you're saying is, that's your opinion, not my opinion. I will not let it in. The second thing is, if somebody really goes after you and says, oh, somebody said that about me, you're just Tony Robbins in a dress, you copied everything from him, you're not original. I know that's not true. So I could say, oh, are you trying to hurt my feelings? Usually they'll go, no, not at all. I thought I'd tell you that to help you. I was in a store many years ago with my mother, and Cosmopolitan magazine was on the newsstand, and they just done a feature on me. And I said, oh, hey, Mum, this is so great. Look, there's this magazine. And she said, darling, I don't think you should be doing a feature on relationships, because you haven't even got one, because it was a talk on how to attract love with a free, or I think it was a free cassette at the time. That's how long ago it was. And I thought, wow, that's my own mother saying, I don't think you should be making a thing about relationships. You haven't got one. So I said, Mum, you trying to hurt my feelings? She said, no, darling, not at all. I'm trying to help you by telling you not to do things do something on a career. You're really good at career. And so although what she said was immensely hurtful, she actually thought it was helpful. People say, oh, no, you suck at that. Oh, never do that. Oh, you look awful in that. They really think they're helping you. So when you say you're trying to hurt my feelings, and I go, of course not. Then you go, well, that's good. But if they say, because they might, yeah, I am. I really want to tell you that you're horrible, you're awful. You go, well, that's okay, because I'm not letting that in. So the first thing is, thanks for sharing. Second is, are you trying to hurt my feelings? They usually say no. Third is, if they say, yes, I really want to hurt your feelings, you say, well, that's not going to work, because I'm not letting it in. And then you can say, since we're sharing here, did you know that critical people are the unhappiest people in the whole world? And all the criticism they're spouting out means that they don't like themselves. So you're criticizing me because you don't like yourself. And that will always stop them in their tracks. They won't like that, but they'll stop going after you because they know you've worked them out. It's a bit like a seesaw. Let me have a little demo. Just hold on 1 minute. So let's imagine that's a seesaw and you're there and they're there. But you see, a critical person actually thinks that you're elevated and they're not. And so they can only do two things: elevate themselves or diminish you, because they don't want that to happen. They want that to happen. So they always want to diminish you or elevate themselves, but they can't diminish you unless you say, oh, you're right. You have to agree with them. And you can always choose not to. We live in a world where there are trolls now, and so many people who get up in the morning and like to do mean things. But then you have to really think, who wakes up and goes, wow, my life is so great. Who could I diminish today? My life is so amazing. Let me get out my laptop and start really putting people down. The people that do that are unhappy. They're miserable. There's something missing in their life. If they can only get joy from doing, there's something missing, is they feel inadequate. Because superior people praise and people who don't feel superior criticize. Criticism withers your soul, praise builds it up. And there's plenty of critics in the world, but you have the choice to say, no, I'm not going to let that. You know, there's never been a statue erected to a critic, ever. So remember that. And it is unfortunate that the internet's given them anonymousness and freedom to sometimes say the most awful things about people who really don't deserve it. But the most important words you'll ever hear are the words you say to yourself. So just keep saying, I'm happy and I'm good, I'm great. The most important words are your words.
On that note then, so obviously you've literally written the book on I Am Enough, and you've obviously experienced a lot of people that have found out that they don't feel they're enough. And if people think they're not enough, obviously either consciously or certainly at a subconscious level, then that can have lots of impact. So what have you found to be the root causes of why people think they're not enough, and how do they overcome that?
Well, it always comes from your child. You think when you're a baby and you're born, the first thing that happens is people count your fingers and toes, and no baby goes, don't look at me, I haven't got any hair, I'm having a bad day. So a baby, you know, and I used to push my little girl out down the street and her pram would come and look at her and she'd kick her little legs and she'd smile, her toothless smile. And she loved attention, just like when you get a cat or a dog, they love attention. So nobody is born saying, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I mean, if you put your baby in a cupboard, it will scream for days because it clearly knows it is enough. I have a lovely friend called Sammy Shoebox. Gosh, I love him. But I love his story. He was put in a shoebox on a tip in the Philippines and just left there as a newborn baby. And he cried for 3 days. I mean, the first day somebody thought it was a cat. By the third day, they went and had a look and found this baby whose life changed then. He was adopted in America. But if he hadn't cried for 3 days, he wouldn't be here. And why did he cry for 3 days? Because his innate intelligence said, I need some people and I'm worthy of them. So I'm going to demand attention. Babies do that. They demand you feed them, pick them up, hold them. Animals do that. When you're on the computer, they walk right across it. They come and sit on you. They demand attention, but what is underneath that is a belief, I'm worth it. So what happens? Well, what happens is parents start to say, oh, your sister, she wasn't messy like you, your brother. Or they say, you know, you were supposed to be a girl, or you were supposed to be a boy, or I don't like you when you do that. Or parents leave, or they get divorced, or they bring another partner into the house and they have a new baby and you feel sidelined. And when children's needs aren't met by the people that bring them up, they never hate them. They hate themselves. They don't blame the parents. Oh, my mum's an alcoholic. My dad has got anger issues. They blame themselves. I'm not enough. So when a child's needs are not met, they now believe they're not enough. And that's why I formed the I Am Enough movement, to say, look, that's not okay that your father left when you were 3 months old and never came back and didn't even pay child support. It's not okay, but that doesn't define you. It wasn't you that wasn't enough, it was him. because children have to idealize their parents. And that's why it's easier to blame yourself. If you work out that your father's mentally ill and your mom has got a drinking problem and is running around town and bringing home different guys every week, that's terrifying as a child. Much better to think, oh, it's my fault. My mom's got all these different boyfriends because I'm not enough. My dad's angry because I'm not enough. My dad's drinking. I must make him unhappy. And it's a terrible shame that children blame themselves, but it's a survival thing. And I depend on my parents, so I'll idolize them and pretend I'm not okay. And by the time you can work out that it really wasn't your fault at all, nobody does. They still go, but I'm not enough. I'm not lovable enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not interesting enough. I'm not worthy enough. And once you buy into that, you'll keep it. I mean, I watched that documentary about Whitney Houston called Can I Be Me? I mean, even the title was so telling. And that life she had of having to perform for everyone else except for herself. And so, but the good news in that is that it's never too late to go back and undo old programming. That's what RTT does. It takes you back. People come in with a story. Here's the story of my life. And it's often a terrible story. And I know the day I see someone, I have the honor and the joy and the privilege of changing the ending of their movie. And so does all the people that I've trained to do what I do. Because it's never too late to change the ending. You know, we're working so hard to change the ending without understanding it. Sometimes you have to change the beginning. It's like, okay, my dad was absent, so I'm really attracted to absent people. Then I spent all my life trying to make them present. Well, no, don't do that. Start being attracted to someone who's present in the beginning. Life's too short to keep trying to recreate what you know and changing the ending. Sometimes you have to change the beginning to change the ending. And men will say, my mother was cold and distant. I love cold, distant women. They've got my name all over them. And I try to turn them into somebody warm and loving. And it's such a shame that we do that. But when you can simplify therapy and realize that everyone has the same problems, and the biggest one is I'm not enough by far. The biggest thing wrong with people is they don't feel enough. They don't feel worthy enough, lovable enough, smart enough, interesting enough. So many different enoughs. And I've worked with thousands of addicts and they all had that thing, I'm not enough. So I need more drink, more drugs, more food, more gambling, more donuts, more attention, more praise, more partners. And that's not what you have to solve. You have to solve what lies beneath the I'm not enoughness. And all my graduates are trained for whatever a client comes in with. I'm coming in with a chronic headache, or I'm coming in with a nervous stomach, I'm coming in with I can't speak in public. Of course, we treat the presenting problem, but we also treat what lies beneath, which can only be I'm not enough, I'm different, so I can't connect, which is a biggie because we used to all look the same. We lived in tribes, we were like everyone. And now we live in a multicultural world. And if we connect by being the same, that's very hard if you feel different. And the third one is interesting. It's, I want something so much. I'm going to cough again. I swallowed some dust. Hold on. Do that one again. And the third one is interesting. It's, I want something so much, but I know it's not available. I want love, but I was left behind as a baby. I want to be happy, but I've got the depressed gene. I want to stop drinking. I come from a family of alcoholics. So this belief that what I want is not available to me, the belief that I'm different so I can't connect, and the belief that I'm not enough, they are the common denominator that runs every single issue my clients have. And I always look at which one. Sometimes I say to them, which one is it? They go, oh, it's definitely that one. They go, how did you work that out so fast? But it's because it's the background of human problems. Of course, if you're living in a country with no food, no shelter, and a war, it's a little different. But in the modern world, those three issues are what's wrong with everyone. And they're very easy to change once you know how.
And that's changing the story, right? So that they then change their story, so they realize, actually, I am enough. I can fit in, and what I want is possible for me to be able to get it, and I can achieve what it is that I want. And changing that internal dialogue, which obviously you do in an incredible way, and all of your graduates and other therapists that are trained in the RTT method, which can be done. Which, by the way, in the show notes I'll leave a link to it so people can get access to it that want to find out more. And how quickly, so I know, like you said, traditional therapy, people in therapy for years, decades in some instances, but how quickly can people change that? Because they might have been running this pattern and knowing that they don't feel enough for 10 years or 20 years. How quickly can it be, how quickly can that new belief be installed for them?
Oh, 5 minutes. I worked with a girl not long ago who turned up and said, I bought a one-way ticket to see you, and if you don't see me, I'm going to kill myself. I'm not going home. And that was interesting. But as we began to listen to her story, it was a very interesting story. Her mother used to tell her all the time when she was little, your brother nearly killed me. He was such a naughty baby. He was awake all night and slept all day, and I nearly died. And if you'd been the same, it would have killed me. But I was so lucky. You were the good girl. And she said, she's such a good girl. She's always asleep. She never complains. She doesn't ask for anything. But the mother would say to her, you are the good baby. You're the angel and your brother's the devil. And she said all these things in a loving way. But this little girl picked up a belief, I must be good all the time. And she said, I try to be a good wife, a good mom. And I try to be so good. I said, I think you need to be bad. I think you need to go to Victoria's Secret and stop being good. Because this pressure to be good, that's why you're depressed, because you've got this belief, I must be good. I must be good. I'm trying to be a perfect mom. Well, that's impossible. I've got to be a perfect wife, be a perfect, or to be perfect at work. And I said, it's too hard to be perfect. You've entered a race with no finishing line ever. But for her, the story she told was, I must be good at everything all the time, and then I'll be happy. So she was trying to reach happiness, and there is no destination called happiness. It's the journey you're on now. And when she could change that to, happiness comes from not being good. It comes from actually being a bit wild and crazy and reckless. And I can't be a perfect mum. Even if I went to college and took a degree in being a perfect mum, I wouldn't achieve it. I can't be a perfect wife. And even if you could, imagine the pressure you give to your kids and your husband if you're perfect, because they're not. So for her telling herself a different story, I'm allowed to not be perfect. It's great to not, because I tell people that, listen, here's the truth. I'm flawed, you're flawed, and the best we can ever have is a flawed person having a flawed relationship with a flawed person. My husband is flawed. I'm so glad he is, because if he wasn't, it'd be hard for me to be flawed, but we all have our flaws. I had many failures as a parent, but I couldn't get it right. Nobody can. And it's much better to free yourself of that pressure, the pressure to be perfect. People who try to be perfect are, without question, the unhappiest and the loneliest. And her life changed on a dime when she said, I'm not supposed to be good. I said, no, sometimes your funniest times is when you're bad, Think about being a kid when you jump on a train and you don't pay the fare. I mean, we don't do that now. Or you do something naughty, when I was a kid, you used to go into orchards and steal apples and, drive too fast, break the speed limit just for fun. But those things made you feel fun. It's that stupid thing you do as a kid. You knock on someone's door and run away. Also silly, but you have to be naughty. Naughty is great. And so changing the story changes everything. And Terry Pratchett said, everything in life is a story. So everyone I train in RTT will look for the story. Here it comes. I've got to be good. I've got to be perfect. No, I mustn't fail. And her story was interesting. And many people don't understand that the basis of all friendship is we pick people who share our vulnerabilities. When you pretend you're perfect and you haven't got any, you don't have any friends. So what's the point of that?
What a great way of looking at it. Yeah, I love that. One of the things that no doubt you have experienced in the work that you've done, and you've worked with the elite of the elite and and like you mentioned, sort of everything in between. The people that do have it all, so to speak. You know, the people that have the internal success in terms of peace and sort of contentment and happiness, but then maybe have the material items around themselves. With those people that you've worked with there, what is it that you found was the difference, that made the difference with those versus those that maybe had all of the trimmings but didn't have it internally?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question. People say you can't have it all. Something's got to give. You can have it all, and you can have it all at the same time too, if you know how. And, you know, I did everything in life the wrong way. I was a single parent. I raised my daughter alone. I became successful later. I married my husband, I think, when I was 50. And now I think, wow, I really do it all. I have a beautiful marriage, amazing daughter, a great relationship with her, an amazing life, an amazing career. But to have it all requires three things. One is you must believe that you're worth it. If you don't believe you're worth it, you can get it and you'll get rid of it. And it's what I call the self-destructive talent. I can get it. The people who've won the lottery, 70% actually, you know, dead broke in 3 years. So if you don't believe you're worth it, you'll attract it and you'll get rid of it. So you must believe you're worth it to have it. Well, secondly, you have to be prepared to say, oh, you know, can I just manifest it? No, you can't sit in your house and manifest being a millionaire or even manifest a partner. You've got to go out and put yourself in front of people. So you've got to believe you're worth it. You've got to do the work to acquire it. There's a whole generation who don't think they should work. They just believe they can manifest. And then you've got to get joy in it. It's no point having, oh my God, it's so stressful. I've got 3 homes all over the world and there's something wrong with that one and my staff. So you can't bitch and moan about it when you've got it. And you should be prepared to share it. You know, if you're doing well and you're prepared to help other people, we're just about to offer scholarships in our TT because after 5 years, we're doing so well that we can do that now. And a lot of our grads, you know, once a month, I'll see a client and I don't charge them. I'll see one who can't afford my services. So believe you're worth it, prepared to work really hard. But when you love what you do, it never feels like work. I feel like I've never worked a day in my entire life. And actually, I work really hard. But because I love it, it never feels like work. And I'm going to do it for the rest of my life. But you must be prepared to never complain about it. Oh, the hours and, oh, you know, my Porsche is just broken down and this first class flight was so awful, because you're living someone else's fantasy dream come true, and share it. But if you want success, see, people who are really successful leave a lot of clues. People who succeed do this, and it's so important. They do what they hate to get to where they want to be. They'll do what they hate and they'll do it first. If you want to be successful, you must be prepared to do what you dislike first. You've got to make difficult calls. You've got to ring people up and say, hey, can I appear on your television show? You have to be prepared to do what you don't want to do. The second thing is you must take action every day in the direction of your goals on the way to success. When you made it, you can take loads of time off, but the taking action every day doesn't mean working. It means even on a Sunday, make a few calls, do 15 minutes of research. The third thing is you must have the bounce back, right? You must be like a big red rubber ball, because people who succeed, they don't not fail. They just get back up again. I mean, look at Will Young. Simon Cowell said to him, you'll never make it. He did. I mean, One Direction didn't even win X Factor. They have been, in terms of money, they were the most successful boy band in the world, and they didn't even win. They didn't go, we didn't win. What's the point? You must have the bounce back factor. You must be prepared to delay gratification. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to watch my favorite show, make a dinner, and then I'll do a bit of work. No, you have to go, I'm going to do this work, and then my show and the dinner are my reward. And finally, you must praise yourself. If you are starting a startup with no boss to pat you on the back or give you feedback, you've got to think of a muscle that will wither if you don't use it. So you must be prepared to praise yourself, to go, hey, I did a great job today. You must be prepared to say, I'm really good at this. This is my area of excellence. Jamie Oliver never says I'm a rubbish cook, because I'm a brilliant cook. I'm the best cook in the world. So you've got to be prepared to big up yourself. You're not saying, oh, I'm good at everything, me. You go, no, I'm particularly good at therapy. I'm great at cooking. My skill set is IT. And if you can do those 5 things and you can work on one at a time, you don't have to do them all at once, but if you do them, you almost can't stop yourself being successful, because that is the habit successful people have. Some have them naturally, many had to make themselves acquire them. But if you have to adopt them, they become natural over time too.
I think it's so interesting, again, having sort of researched your work and some of the things that you do, and you are someone that's literally walked that talk as well. You know, I remember reading that when you talk about every day, you used to reach out to a journalist every day. I mean, little people go, oh wow, Marisa Peer, she's been a columnist in this column and that column, and you're on this TV show and that TV show, and it's very easy for people to go, oh well, one day someone must have just called you up out of the blue, but you actually were on the front foot. Yeah. You were every single day you reached out to those journalists, didn't you?
That was doing what I really did, because no one goes, hey, here I am, do you want to write about me? No, thanks, never heard of you. So I knew that I had to do. I had so many clients who were successful, and they told me that. With a lot of Olympic athletes who said, you know, you got to do what you hate. Wake up at 5 a.m., wipe the ice off your windscreen and drive to the training in the dark and cold because you want to win a gold medal. And there's no partying, no staying, no drinking. I mean, I was looking at Tom Brady and the diet he eats, which is kind of restrictive, but he does that because it gets him to where he is the most successful athlete in America of all time. And he's 42. But he doesn't go, oh, I can't eat ice cream. It's so unfair. I can't have pizza. He goes, nope. I'm earning $10 million a week. I don't know what he earns by not eating tomatoes and gluten and dairy. So I did look at those 5 things. I must do. I don't ring a journalist every day. When they hang up on me, I ring another one every day. I had to make a call. And that was also taking that direction every day, because I didn't have a day off. Journalists work on a Saturday. They work on a Sunday if they're doing the weekend paper. So every day I rang someone. And it really worked for me. I took action every day. I celebrated all the wins. When I got the no's, I bowed. I mean, I was replaced on a show by Ann Widdecombe. I mean, you know, people said never get big-headed. I'm like, I got replaced by Ann Widdecombe. How could I ever be big-headed? But you still got to come back. But I've done those 5 things. That's how I know they've worked. And you can all do them too. And if you do them, think of it like this. If someone said, I've got a club for success, we want to join, I want to join. Well, these are the 5 dues. There's no fee, but you've got to do those 5 things. If you do them, you can only succeed.
So Marisa, thank you so much. It's been phenomenal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share in the comments below where people can find about RTT, where they can find out about your books and find out more about you. So this has been incredible. Thank you so much for being a phenomenal guest.
Let me just say one thing. If you want free stuff, free audios on wealth blocks, love blocks, health blocks, go to marisapeer.com. They're all free. If you want to train in RTT and do what I do, go to rtt.com. And if you want to know you're enough, go to imenough.com. We've got lots of free stuff for you everywhere. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure and a joy.
Thank you, Marisa. Until next time, make it happen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make It Happen with Will Polston podcast. Make sure you join Will's free Facebook group, the Make It Happen community. Please support the show by subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Google Play. Share this episode with at least one friend you think would benefit from it, and give Will a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. Until next time, make it happen.